Today we will discuss three of the major important concepts of Vivekananda, that is Vivekananda's concept of nationalism, internationalism and government. You know friends, Swami Vivekananda wanted a rejuvenated India based on morally inspired, rational individuals with a goal for social and moral uplift of his countrymen. And he tried to inspire his countrymen in these words, and I quote: Arise and awake and see her seated here on her eternal throne, rejuvenated, more glorious than she ever was, this motherland of ours. Unquote. Such an emotional appeal for motherland and his lifelong mission to uplift the poorest of the poor of India and to stand for the unity and integrity of India seriously make and surely make Vivekananda a nationalist par excellence. But Vivekananda, friends, did not want his national glory alone, nor did he want that India should remain in seclusion, far away from the world of knowledge and all the happenings which are taking place outside the boundaries of India. And in fact, he always tried to engage himself in spiritual and philosophical dialogue with the West. That is why he went to Chicago in 1893 to deliver his Chicago speech to attain the World Parliament for Religion. Uh, but to understand, Vivekananda was a nationalist. At the same time, he was an internationalist. We also need to understand the context, the historical context in which these ideas were developed. You know, by the second half of the 19th century, the educated Hindu gentry of Bengal and India, they had accepted the Western education system. And the first generation of the people who got Western education, they were swayed by it. And a very radical group among them was known as the Young Bengal group. And this group, in fact, criticized anything associated with Hinduism. They decried Hinduism because, according to them, Hinduism is obscurantism. It is a dark religion, according to those radical youth known as the Young Bengal group. And at the same time, at the same moment, another religious movement that was cropping up in Bengal was known as the Brahmo Samaj movement, inspired by the ideals of Raja Ram Mohan Roy. It was based on the ideals of Upanishadic Brahma with the organization of Christian Church. But Brahmo religion and Brahmo sect also rather undermined Hinduism as a modern religion. So Hinduism was undermined in the eyes of the educated people in India, both Indians and the Western people. Vivekananda wanted to reinstate this glory of Hinduism and respectability of Hindu religion, not only in the eyes of the Indians but in the eyes of the world. On another score, the last quarter of 19th century also saw a tremendous economic degradation in the national life. Jobs were shrinking, and jobs were educated people who sought jobs, and jobs were restricted to government services only, and those jobs were limited. And even a person of Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's caliber, Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay, friends, the person who wrote the Vande Mataram song and who was a great novelist of Bengali literature, he had to be content with his deputy magistrateship only. And a young person of Vivekananda's caliber, Vivekananda, was Narendranath Datta when he was born. He became Vivekananda later. So even a man of Vivekananda's caliber could not get a job, a satisfactory job to sustain his large family. In such a background of frustration, the educated educated young men of India, a great part of them sought to organize themselves through political organizations, which culminated in the formation of Indian National Congress. Another group, a small group of educated young persons, also sought refuge in spirituality, leaving behind the mundane affairs of daily existence. And they left their homes to become monks and sadhus. Although Vivekananda belonged to the second category, he did not want spiritual moksha or spiritual emancipation for himself, but he sought to elevate the whole nation, the poorest of the poor. He wanted to instill in them the spirit of self-awakening. And so Vivekananda acted almost as a bridge between the political groups and this spiritual group. And he wanted to blend spiritualism into the world of politics and in the politics of nationalism. Vivekananda was an ardent nationalist, no doubt. He sought to instill in Indian masses a self-confidence which they had lost. And he believed that each nation had its unique kind of element which unites all the people of the nation. He said that, like music, in every music there is a basic note, the key note. As in music, every nation has a key note, a principal note, and all other notes or all other elements are secondary compared to that principal note. And according to him, according to Vivekananda, according to Swamiji, politics was the principal note or the central note of European nations. But for India, it is the religion. Religion was the main note or the principal note of the Indian nation. And he wrote, and I quote, "The one common ground that we have is our sacred tradition, our religion. That is the common ground, and upon that we shall have to build. In Europe, political ideas form national unity. The unity in religion is absolutely necessary as the first condition of the future of India." So Vivekananda absolutely believed that religion is that keynote of Indian nation. According to him, religion gives a nation a moral foundation, a spiritual foundation. And the nations which are not based on spirituality and morality only strive for material success. But by accommodating this spiritual foundation, this spirit of moral foundation in Indian nationalism, Vivekananda wanted that India should strive for both material and moral freedom, both material and moral success. That is why Vivekananda thought that Indians should be proud of their nation. They should be proud of their nation because this nation gives him the chance to be both morally and spiritually and materially rich. So he was against any blind imitation of the West. in order to charge up his fellow countrymen uh, 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 for standing in the cause of nationalist unity and nationalist uplift, he wrote, and I quote, "O India, with this mere echoing of others, with this basic imitation of others, with this dependence on others, with this slavish weakness, scale the highest pinnacle of civilization and greatness? Would thou attain, by means of this disgraceful cowardice, that freedom deserved only by the brave and the heroic? Forget not that the lower classes, the ignorant, the poor, the illiterate, the cobbler, the sweeper are thy flesh and blood, thy brothers. Thou brave one, be bold, take courage, be proud that thou art an Indian, and proudly proclaim, I am an Indian, every Indian is my brother." Unquote. By instilling this self-confidence, Vivekananda liked that the Indians should be prepared to sacrifice their self-interest at the altar of nationalism. And all such efforts, he believed, would make India a strong and vibrant nation based on the spirit of self-sacrifice. And this spirit of self-sacrifice inspired a generation of Indian radical nationalists as well as national revolutionaries. Vivekananda's slogans like "Freedom, freedom is the song of the soul," or "Arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached," or "Fight on bravely, life is short, give it up to a cause," etc., had given the extremist and revolutionary politics a moral base. And we can also refer to certain government documents, friends, and police reports. For example, Bengal Administrative Committee report of 1915 had emphatically described the influence of Vivekananda on Barindranath Ghosh, a great revolutionary and younger brother of Sri Aurobindo Ghosh and his associates. And the Sedition Committee report of 1918 also depicted Vivekananda as the philosopher of revolutionary movement in India. And again, a CID officer called Mr. Denham had told Miss MacLeod, a follower of Swami Vivekananda, that wherever they went for a search in a revolutionary's house, they found the copies of books of Swami Vivekananda. However, despite his emphasis on Hinduism as the basic religion of India, his religion and that emphasis was not exclusive. That was inclusive. And in case of nationalism, he wanted to unify all the Indians irrespective of caste, creed, religion, language, etc. And he also knew about the flip side of being too much proud about one's own religion and one's own nation. He believed that he thought and he said that to have pride in one's own past, one's own national past is one thing, and to live in one's own past is another thing. He didn't like the second idea that one may have pride in one's own past, but one should not live in past alone. One should look forward to future. Now we come to the Vivekananda's concept of internationalism. For Swamiji, internationalism was another name for universal brotherhood and peace. And he got this idea from his Advaitic philosophy. And he didn't view that nationalism and internationalism are two contradictory concepts. Rather, he developed his concept of internationalism, his idea of internationalism through his concept of nationalism. Because Vivekananda wanted to see India not in isolation, but his glory in the comity of the nations. And in his words, this is the motherland of philosophy and spirituality and of ethics, of sweetness and love. India is still the first and foremost of all the nations of the world in these respects. So he wanted India's glory, but not in isolation, but among all the nations of the world. So he believed in nationalism as well as he believed in internationalism. And he advocated the idea of international cooperation much before that this idea, this concept received serious international attention. Before Woodrow Wilson or any other person raised such an issue, Vivekananda thought of international cooperation. And I quote again, if I injure others, I am in a deep metaphysical sense injuring myself, because the one universal, infinite soul inheres in all. So you see, this is the idea, this is the basic principle of Upanishad, this is the basic principle of Advaita, which see oneness in all human beings. He was aware that India alone cannot reach her height, the real height, without learning from others. So there is also a need that India should learn from others and others should learn from India. So cooperation, exchange of knowledge, on which Tagore gave much emphasis later, was important in Vivekananda's thought. And this international cooperation forms one of the very important elements of his idea of internationalism. Vivekananda thought that many Western elements should be injected in Indian nation. So in that way too, he believed in the spirit of international cooperation and exchanges. For example, he believed that the Indians should learn from the West about the science, technology, and also respect for women, and also and also about humanism. So Vivekananda did not want India to grow alone. Now, so these are the basic things of his internationalism. He wanted that the Indians should gain from the West, and the Western people also should gain from India, gain from their spiritual experiences, their philosophical richness. The last part of our discussion, that is Vivekananda's concept of government. Vivekananda was not satisfied about the existing patterns of government. For example, he was not happy with the system of monarchy. According to him, he pointed out that monarchy is incompatible with individual freedom. And he wrote, and I quote again, neither under the Hindu kings nor under the Buddhist rule do we find the common subject people taking any part in expressing their voice in the affair of the state, unquote. He was also against aristocracy because, according to him, aristocracy signified the worst form of tyranny. Although he thought democracy to be an ideal system of government, he couldn't wholly accept the Western concept of democracy. In his essay, The East and the West, he pointed out these things, and I quote again. In Western democracies, what only a handful of powerful men dictate becomes the fait accompli. The rest of the men only follow like a flock of sheep. In the name of politics, these handful of powerful men rob others and fatten themselves by sucking the very lifeblood of the masses. And there are superfluous fuss and bustle of the words like majority, parliament, senate, vote, ballot, and similar concomitant tugs of war in all democratic countries in the West. The real democracy, according to Vivekananda, should be founded on the basis of spirituality and morality. Because institutions of democracy, according to Vivekananda, do not produce good men or bad men. Good people do not come from the institutions if they are not founded on moral groundings. And this could be done when a government had stood on moral foundation. And here, according to Vivekananda, the teachings of Upanishads can act as the founding stones of democracies. In these words, he wrote about it. When the government of a country is guided by codes of laws enjoined by Shastras, which are the outcome of knowledge inspired by the divine genius of great sages, such a government must lead to the unbroken welfare of the rich and the poor, the wise and the ignorant, the king and the subjects alike. That is, in crux, the main spirit of Vivekananda's concept of ideal government.